Here's how I spent my 24 hours in Death Valley National Park. So out of the 9 national parks in California, I had left to visit Joshua Tree, Death Valley, and Channel Islands. So in the spring of 25, I had the opportunity to go film a wedding with my buddy Jeff in Julian, which is about an hour and a half outside of San Diego. So I wanted to take advantage of that trip that was already provided for me to go there and try to knock off the rest of the national parks there. Death Valley was actually kind of a last minute decision. I actually hadn't planned on going to Death Valley. I'd planned on going to Joshua Tree and Channel Islands, but Death Valley was one I was just going to have to miss and do another time. But I was able to move some flights around. I landed on a Tuesday, midday, and I hit the ground running. I got my car rental and took off towards Death Valley. It's about a 5-hour drive, 4.5, 5-hour drive down into Death Valley from San Diego. San Diego was the airport we were already flying into, so I just moved my flights up a little bit earlier. I knew that drive was going to be long, but with everything, if it lined up correctly, I would have about 24 hours in the park before I had to be back for the wedding activities on Thursday back in San Diego. Now, my plan was to camp in Death Valley. I was there in late April, and the campsites there in the park are all available but not reservable. It's technically their summer season, even though it's not really summer yet. The park considers April through, I believe, October the summer season. So the campsites in the park are only first come, first serve. You can't reserve a site in the park for some reason. I'm not sure why. But anyway, I was going to go to Furnace Creek Campground, which is kind of near the main visitor center right in the heart of the park. And I knew that it was going to be a chance that the park would not have space in the campground. I expected them to, because I knew that wasn't the highest season as far as visitors, but I wasn't sure. My goal was to get there before sunset, but driving from San Diego through the edge of LA and then up, I just hit traffic. It took me longer than I expected. It took me longer than I wanted it to, sitting in traffic, and so I didn't get there until after sunset. My plan was to go into Furnace Creek, but as I was driving in, I found a spot right outside the park that a bunch of vans and campers were parked, and so I was like, oh, I wonder what that is. And so I pulled over, had a little bit of service, checked my phone, and there was a spot called The Pads on Google Maps or Apple Maps. It was just a location called The Pads. It was like an old abandoned RV park, had big pads where RVs would have parked, and even had like sewer stations where the dump would have been for the campers, all capped off out there at each spot. So I pulled into that spot and decided that that was the best spot for me to stay for the night.
All right, so as I was driving down the road, about to go into Death Valley, I found a spot where a bunch of campers and vans had pulled off the road. It looks like an old campground. There's like pads out here. There goes the light. There's like old like RV pads out here and stuff, but it's totally deserted. But there's probably, I don't know, a dozen or so vans or campers out here. So I turned around. I wasn't sure if there was space in the campground in the park or not, and it cost. And this was free. And I want to get a picture of the sign in the morning, so I think I'm just going to camp here, sleep in the car. Check it out.
So the morning started out early, about 5 a.m. I left the pads, woke up, got packed up, drove down to the entrance, stopped at the sign for the sign picture in the morning, and sun was not up yet, so I just kept driving down to Zabriskie Point. So that sunrise in Death Valley was awesome. I mean, just the vibrant color in the sky, the rocks glowing across the horizon, like it was just something special. Super quiet out there. I went up to Zabriskie Point and was there as the sun came up over the mountains. There was probably, I don't know, 100 other people up there. It was not super private, but plenty big area to check out. And that sunrise was something special. It was just super vibrant, and you could see the sun coming up over the horizon in the distance, down over Badwater Basin and hitting the mountains in the distance, and the golden glow on those. And there was just cool cloud formations and lots of color there. So my day started with that sunrise at Zabriskie Point, and the rest of the day I just tried to hit as many places as I could, and I feel like I saw a lot considering that I only had that one day there. So I left Zabriskie and drove down into the park, down to the Furnace Creek area, and then took a left to go to Badwater Basin. So I know that Death Valley gets visitors more often throughout the winter and the cooler months. I was there April 23rd, so it's kind of right on the edge in the shoulder season of the busier time and kind of dropping off when it gets so hot in the summertime.
I think I may have hit Death Valley at the perfect time. It's April the 23rd, and it's like overcast, but blue skies. So there's clouds behind me there, then it's blue skies here. Sun's coming up over the mountain here. I walked out to Badwater Basin. There's like 5 cars here. It's technically summer season for them, but it's not summer yet. It's not very hot out here. It's like, I don't have any way of telling the temperature. It's probably 70 degrees. It's warm, but it's definitely not hot. And I stayed last night at the campground just outside the park, and it was cool. It was not cold, but it was cool. It was probably 55 last night or so. So, I don't know. This first time here, I'm going to be spoiled when I come back because the weather's so good. The overcast sky had some nice super pink purple clouds this morning. Yeah, I was going to wait and come down here for sunset, which I may come back for sunset, but it's pretty awesome right now. I don't know that it could get better.
So as I headed out to Badwater Basin in the morning, I wanted to stop by the Artist Palette, which is just like a 9-mile, I believe, loop drive. So the Artist Palette is a spot that is known for its color. There's rocks with different greens and purple hues, and it's known for the bright variance of color throughout that little section of the park. So it was beautiful. It was a cool little drive to go through. Definitely check out the Artist Palette on your way out to Badwater Basin. So after leaving Artist Palette, I went down to Badwater Basin. I wanted to get down there as early as I could to experience it without it being as hot. It was wide open, a couple of people out walking on the flats, but it was all mine. I was out there by myself pretty much. I was able to walk out a good little ways and just kind of experience it by myself, and that was the coolest place. The fact that you have the salt flats there in the basin, but you're surrounded by the mountains. You have so many high peaks on almost in every direction. It is just a really beautiful spot. So Death Valley is the largest national park in the lower 48. There are some parks bigger, they're all in Alaska, but Death Valley is millions and millions of acres. Everything's a long way. I talked about in one of the other videos that we did from Big Bend, how big Big Bend was, but Death Valley is even bigger. There's a lot of driving. There's a lot of driving, like point to point to point to point throughout the park. You've got 50 or 60 miles to drive. And there's nothing much in between those points. Sometimes there's a small little stop or something like that, but for the most part, there's just driving. You drive and you see stuff, you get out of the car, you check that spot out, you hike, you see that place, then you drive somewhere else and go see the other spot. So Death Valley is the lowest point in North America. It's also one of the driest. So there's not a lot of life. There's not a lot of plant life. There's not much wildlife. there's not a lot of variation in things to see as far as different environments. It's all pretty much dry and deserty. There are some small pockets of streams and places where streams are in the wet season that have a little bit of plant life. There is a little bit of wildlife. I did see a few lizards and a coyote while I was there, but for the most part, it's really dry. There's sand and rocks and dirt and everything like that all over the place. But the formations and the geology of the place make it so beautiful. So there's so much variety in the dryness. It's not all just flat, barren wasteland. There are peaks there in the park that are over 10,000 feet. There's some, I think the highest point is over 11,000 feet. So there's a lot of variance and things to see and places to explore. So I looked all over at different places in Death Valley as I was headed there, trying to find out the places to hit and to see and what the high points would be, because I just had a day. So after leaving Badwater Basin, the Natural Bridge hike is just right up from there. Super easy hike. I do recommend doing it later. You don't have to be there at sunrise because the sun is blocked and you're in some shade with the walls of the canyon. So it's a really easy hike. You walk up the canyon floor there a few hundred yards and you're up there at the Natural Bridge. It's a pretty big arch that goes right over the canyon, and it's a cool little spot to stop. All right, so I spent about an hour or so up at the Natural Bridge, and then I headed out and I wanted to stop at the Devil's Golf Course. It has these salt formations that have protruded out of the ground. It's super rough, super sharp. They're all extremely hard, but it goes forever. It's this huge open area, just this rough ground, just up from Badwater Basin in the salt flats. It's a really cool and kind of unique place, but just be careful as you walk through there because the salt formations are super sharp. So it was getting to be middle of the day, the hotter part of the day, and so I wanted to go by the visitor center and check out some stuff there, and then stop and get a drink at the store and things like that. And the little village area, one thing that's unique about Death Valley is the fact that they have a few different hotels and stores and restaurants and shops and stuff there in the middle of the park. So most parks have a visitor center and usually gift shops and things like that. And some of the parks like Glacier have lodges and everything like that too. But Death Valley's almost got like a little village there in the middle near Furnace Creek. I thought it was interesting. I was walking in. There's a little courtyard outside the hotel in the back, and as you walk through to go some of the shops, it's this really green area with the sprinklers running and palm trees and a fountain and everything like that, which is just a very stark contrast to the barren desert that you're surrounded by, to see all the life and the amenities that are there right inside the park. So if you don't want to camp, there's some great options to stop for hotels in Furnace Creek and Stovepipe Wells, and I think there's some other spots too. Those are the only two that I saw while I was there though. So as I said, there's a ton of driving in Death Valley. So if you want to get out and see different areas, you've got to drive a long way. I left Furnace Creek and I wanted to go to the Stovepipe Wells area. There was a canyon up there that I wanted to check out, and that's also where the sand dunes are. So if you go to Stovepipe Wells, the drive up to Mosaic Canyon is just right there. I did that hike. I did it kind of middle of the day. I will say though that out of all the things that I did, probably the thing that I liked the least was Mosaic Canyon. It had some cool stuff. It was about a 4-mile hike, and I would definitely recommend Natural Bridge over Mosaic Canyon. Mosaic Canyon was a good little drive there, and it was pretty, it was cool, but could pick one thing that I probably would have preferred to do something different with a little bit of time there. That would have been something that I would have skipped. So I stopped by the Mesquite Sand Dunes for just a little bit. It was right in the middle of the day. It was probably over 100 degrees, and the sand was blowing. The wind was blowing the sand everywhere. It was a really neat spot. I will say that I had just spent time a few months ago in White Sands and in Guadalupe Mountains, and in Big Bend, which was all desert-filled parks. And while the Mesquite Sand Dunes were super cool and unique, they were different than what we had seen out in those other parks. And I really didn't feel like getting sand all over me, so I didn't spend a lot of time in the sand dunes. I just walked out there for a little bit, took some photos, and kept driving. It was super hot, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time out there in the sands. So when I left the sand dunes, I knew I wanted to go up to Dante's View, and it was an hour or so drive up there from the sand dunes. Good little ways, like everything else. I made a couple of stops. I stopped at the exhibit for the old borax mine and checked out some of that stuff for a few minutes. And then I drove through the 20 Mule Team Canyon Drive, which is just a little off drive from the road that goes to Dante's View. It just loops through. You go in one and come out the other side. Just kind of weaves you through that yellow canyon there. It's about a 7-mile drive. So you weave your way up to Dante's View. It's a long drive, many miles up to the top. And it's about a 5,500, 5,400 foot elevation at that viewpoint. Now, when you're up there, you're looking straight down at Badwater Basin. So you're over a mile up from Badwater Basin. I was looking down at the place, the little entryway that you can see, and you can see little people that look like tiny, tiny little ants. You can see the spot that I'd walked in earlier in the day, and it was really cool to be up that high above such a big, huge basin looking over the valley. The temperature up there was probably around 70. It was nice and cool. It was a beautiful spot to see the vastness of Death Valley, and definitely worth driving up to Dante's View. So I left Dante's View, and I wanted to spend the last bit of light down in Badwater Basin for sunset. Now, it was only 70 degrees up at Dante's View, but I had to go down a mile. Now, it's a mile in elevation, but you had to drive way around. I think it took me an hour to get down there, from driving all the way down to Dante's View Road, then the main road down to Furnace Creek, and then back up to Badwater Basin. So while on the map, my navigation showed that it was just like this close, but the drive was like way around and all the way back down, almost the same spot. So long drive, short distance covered overall, but I wanted to be down there for sunset. There were still not many people down there. It was warmer at that point of the day. It was getting close to sunset, and my car, now I don't know how accurate my Buick temperature gauge is, but the car said it was 101 degrees. So it was definitely warmer than it was earlier in the day when I was down there, but it was really dry, and it wasn't unbearable. Like, it felt warm, but I wasn't dying out there. It wasn't super hot. It was comfortable. It was warm, but it was comfortable. So I spent that time watching the sun go down over Badwater Basin. That was really it. That was the last bit of light that I was going to have. So I just kind of stood there and took it all in as the sun went down, standing out in the middle of Badwater Basin in this big, vast valley of death with not much life out there, just salt and dry earth, and just taking it in, watching the sun go down. It was a cool experience, something that I'm so glad that I did. Death Valley was not really a park that I was super excited about going to. I'd wanted to go there. We had just been in the area a few times, but I just missed it. Like, I didn't have time to make the detour to go up there. And it was a spot, as I went to Joshua Tree and Channel Islands on this same trip later. Joshua Tree was actually one that I was most excited about to visit, and it was great, but Death Valley actually was probably my favorite. I really just scratched the surface of the things that there are to see. And so, is it worth it if you can only spend 24 hours? Yes, 100% worth it. There is a lot that you can do right there in the center, in the middle of the park, that will allow you to experience the beauty of Death Valley in a short amount of time. So Death Valley was National Park number 50 for me. I'm on a quest, or whatever you want to call it, to hit all the national parks. I have 50 done. The trip that I made out to California to get the last of the 9, I have Joshua Tree and Channel Islands planned for this trip. And then I also have 3 more that are on the books for later this year. So hopefully, I'll knock those out if everything holds and the plans don't change. But Death Valley was a great one to be number 50. I'm excited about the things that I got to see. You've definitely got to check out Death Valley National Park.